Good morning, General Brown, and congrats on your nomination. I enjoyed our meeting last month, just a few weeks ago in my office. In that discussion, we talked about the importance of securing the right capabilities to deter our nation's adversaries. And last week, my office received a long-awaited report on divestment of F-15 aircraft, including at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in my home state of North Carolina. The report bears your signature, and it states that the Air Force plans to divest the remaining 149 F-15Cs and Ds in the inventory and 119 F-15Es, leaving fewer than 100 E models while procuring only 24 F-15EXs in each of the next 2 years. So I'm concerned about the divestment of a very capable fighter aircraft, particularly F-15Es with upgraded radars and electronic warfare suites. These are the most advanced fourth-generation fighters in the world, with years of service left. It's particularly concerning given the current threat window and the fighter capacity gap that I believe you've talked about repeatedly. So the report states that these cuts will be used to modernize the force. My question is this: what combat-capable platforms are ready and available today, and I emphasize today, that can be procured now, not in the 2030s or the 2040s?
Senator, I understand your concern in the aspect of, as we look at this, it goes back to a comment I made a little bit earlier about how we balance capability and capacity. And as we do this, it's not just the platforms themselves, it's the other aspects of our command and control, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities that we will continue to invest in to bring those forward to make each of the platforms we have more capable. Not just for the Air Force, but I'd say the same thing across the Joint Force. And it also has to do with the munitions as well. Because of our procurement cycles for each one of these, it's typically from the time we get a budget, and if we get it on time, which is why that's so important, it takes us about a year to two, in some cases, most times than not, 2 years to get that capability. And so not only on the fighter piece, but it's also the capabilities to make those fighters more relevant and combat capable as we go forward. And that's how we're trying to balance between the two and make sure we have the analysis, the research and development to make sure we're staying ahead of the threat, which actually adds to that as well, in bringing in advanced technologies into some of the platforms and capabilities we're procuring, not just, again, for the Air Force, but really for the Joint Force as well.
Thank you, General. In your advanced policy questions regarding the role of Special Operations Forces in implementing the National Defense Strategy, you state, and I quote, "SOF remains ideally suited to identify a competitor's coercive capabilities in the gray zone and counter them with deliberate, credible actions while managing escalation." Given that, end quote. So given that SOF is ideally suited and provides expanded low-cost and credible options for combatant commanders and the President across strategic competition, counterterrorism, and crisis response, would it be, in your best military advice, would you give the advice to this committee to cut Special Operations Force structure?
Well, that is something I'd if confirmed, do a bit more analysis on. But I'd also highlight the fact that our Special Operations Forces, over the course of the past 20 years of conflict, grew a fair amount. And as we rebalance the force and think about all the national security challenges that we have to outline in the National Defense Strategy, how, again, we balance that SOF capability, what it does today and what it will do in the future, because the aspect of SOF, I think, will be a bit different from what we've done, particularly in the Middle East, for the past 20 years.
Well, I understand that. I just have tremendous concerns with what I've seen in the President's budget. But let me ask an ongoing question on the same topic. Do you agree that SOF play a critical role, particularly as it relates to broader efforts to gain influence, advantage, and leverage as part of strategic competition?
They do.
Thank you. Changing topics, military recruiting shortfalls continue to be a grave concern as we consider how the recruiting crisis impacts our nation's military readiness. In our discussions in my office, we talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that, in my view, deter rather than encourage young people to serve. I've heard from many young and qualified individuals from North Carolina who are hesitant to join a force they see as extremely political and defined by DEI policies. In August 22, you signed a memorandum along with the Secretary and Undersecretary of the Air Force directing Air Education and Training Command and the Air Force Academy to achieve diversity and inclusion goals broken down by percentages of both race and sex. We talked about this. It was a good discussion. But I want to give you an opportunity to respond in an open session. What's the purpose of this memo, the one from August of 2022, and how do such policies improve recruiting? Bottom line, I think that we should be suspect of any policies that give advantage to some groups at the expense of others. But I'll give you opportunity.
Senator, the goal is to tap into all the talent across our nation. And that memo outlined applicant goals, and the goal there was to actually outreach to broader aspects across the nation and show them the opportunities to join the force. What the memo also says is there's a goal to allow those young people to understand what the opportunities are, but to get selected and to come into the academy, ROTC, or any other program, it's merit-based. And they have to be qualified and meet the standard to join. We've got to make sure we provide the opportunity. We've talked about, I've talked personally about recruiting the aspect. Young people only aspire to be what they know about. And if they don't know anything about the military, and we don't outreach to them, we may miss some tremendous talent. But they've got to be qualified because we're a merit-based organization, and that's the way we've operated for an extended period of time, and that's the way we will continue to operate as a military force.
Thank you, General. I yield back.